You are listening to Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hey there, everyone. I want to say it is so great to be back. I was on parental leave for the last 6 weeks, so I think the last episode I left with you was interviewing Unity members. These are Native American tribal youth leaders from across the country talking about the issues that are important to them. I really hope you like that one. It was one of my favorites, talking to kids and who are trying to make differences in their tribal community. On a personal note, my wife had our daughter 6 weeks ago, so want to let everyone know that things are going at home are going pretty well. I mean, she is gaining weight super fast, so she's starting to stretch out her sleeps, which is awesome. My 3-year-old son is taking to her pretty well. He loves her. Definitely at sometimes he is fighting for attention, which apparently is all too normal. So I'm glad to say that on that front. Talking to colleagues here who have had kids at a similar age split, about 3 years apart, they tell me they know how difficult it can be, especially those first few years. So I'm in for a ride. I'm all here for it. But again, I am glad to be back at work. Well, today I want to let you know that I am speaking with Amy Denet Deal. She has a really interesting story, and I'm glad that we are bringing her on this morning. She has a story that resonates with many Native Americans this day and age. Reading her bio, she says that her mother was part of the tribal members who actually moved away from a tribal community because of the Indian Relocation Act. This was a time in our nation's history when laws were passed to really encourage Native Americans to leave their tribal communities to designated cities to find jobs and other opportunities away from the reservation and tribal members and families. Nowadays, there have been a lot of people critical of that decision, saying that it really took away a lot of identity from Native people who left and eventually, lost ties. So we hear stories about that all the time. So Amy Denet Deal here is sharing her story of resilience. Amy, thank you so much for coming up with us. Tell us about yourself. I know that right now you are in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We know that you run a store and are a fashion designer, have experience in the fashion industry as well. But what brought you to this point? If you can take me to the beginning.
Gosh, that's like almost 60 years of journey. But yeah, definitely what brought me to this point of being here today is coming home. I think you kind of touched on the fact that, my family suffered that displacement that so many families did during the 50s and 60s of Indian relocation, the one-way bus ticket to some city that they weren't familiar with. And I was born in 1964 before ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act. So my adoption out to a non-Native family was before any of that was protected with our little ones. So for me, being here today, being back in New Mexico and being back in a space surrounded by Native people, I couldn't dream any bigger dream. And to be able to do the community work we've been able to engage in through the brand platform, it's just created a really healing journey for myself, just personally, but also, finding those solutions for the future for our kids. You're a young parent, so you think differently once you have a child, and you're just thinking about not so much yourself, but this next generation, whether it's your children or your grandchildren or the kids that are going to come after that, which is very much who we are as Indigenous people, always thinking ahead. So a big part of really creating the store, creating this brand platform in fashion, which I used to be in, right, is really just using this as a platform to do the community work. So that's basically why it's here. It just allows us to go off and build skate parks and do amazing just workshops and things with the kids to really bring them joy.
So, Amy, tell me about your ties to tribal communities from the Navajo Nation, right? Your mother is your birth mother, part of the Navajo Nation, and she moved to Cincinnati. Yep. Tell me about how you found out about that.
It wasn't, I always knew I was adopted because I was displaced into a very small rural community in Indiana where no one else was brown. So I always knew that there was a point of difference. But, growing up adopted, it's like it took a while to reconnect those dots, because what was very effective during that time period is that there wasn't a lot of information on how to trace your steps back. There wasn't a rule book on how to find your way home. That only really happened for me with the internet, like early 2000, I feel, was kind of like where I could actually search and find some information, since most of the documents, I'm sure a lot of other young people, or now that are in my age, didn't have that option to have an original birth certificate when they were born. That was part of the way things were operating back then. So it made it very hard to find your way back to your birth family.
Wow. So about your adoption, you were adopted out when your mom, who was a teenager, right? She became pregnant with you, and that's.
I think that's back before anybody really kept track, but I think she was almost 20 when I was born. And then basically there was Christian charities set up in the cities where Indian relocation was happening all across the United States. So I was adopted out without any connection to my birth family, any relatives. No one knew I even existed until I reconnected when I was 35 years old. So it is very difficult because of the way things were done at that time period, because there really was no protection of our children. And, we're all grown up now. We're in our 50s, late 50s, 60s, probably 70s. But it is a challenge to find your way home. But I feel that by speaking here today, for people to know that it's totally possible, it's totally worth taking that pathway. There's so much healing that happens when you reconnect with your people, with your land, with your culture. And it's never too late. Like I would say in my Navajo years, right? I'm about 4 years old. I definitely do things sometimes like a 4-year-old. And I'm in this older body, and people are kind of like sometimes offended, sometimes think it's pretty funny, or sometimes not. But like, it's just those baby steps you have to make when you stumble, when you come back home, whether it's learning the language, learning the protocol, learning everything all over again for the first time. But, it's important that we actually start that journey. I now know who I am. I know who my tribe is, and it's only going to get stronger and stronger as these years progress.
Amy, I want to be very sensitive, because I know that adoption can be a very sensitive issue to talk about with people. Yeah. Have you been able to connect with your birth mother, your birth parents? Is that something that was possible for you?
It was it was probably, I'm almost 60, so it was maybe 25 years ago. I did reconnect and was able to at least know my mom. She passed away a couple years ago from COVID, like many of our relatives that were lost during that time. My father, who's Belagana, had already passed probably back in the 80s. So it's just something for me that was such an important part of me understanding who I am. It's not easy. There's a lot of trauma, obviously, in everyone's perspective that's connected to that. But it's just really finding that way to continue to make your way home.
What was it like growing up in Indiana, in that rural town, as you described it, being one of the only people of color? How did you feel? How was your role in the family and in your community?
Yeah, I was in a very loving family. It was a beautiful little small rural town, but I certainly felt displaced. When you look around and no one looks like you, and there is no brownness surrounding you, it is a very uncomfortable feeling, and it's definitely affected my psyche, all through my life, of feeling displaced, feeling like I didn't fit in, or overcompensating, trying to fit in. So I think that's a big part of why I probably did have a pretty successful fashion career, because I was working probably twice as hard as everybody else to prove myself. So I had success early on in fashion just because of that incredible drive, which is really kind of a survivor instinct I had from my childhood, of just trying to overcompensate for what I knew was something where I didn't feel comfortable. And I think a lot of people can relate to what that feels like, depending on how they grew up as adoptees.
When you found out that you had this tie to this community, the Navajo Nation, with its culture and its tribal knowledge, How did you take that?
Gosh, I took that in steps. It was really overwhelming. I remember the first time I came back home when my daughter was just finishing high school, which was really my time when I was ready to step into my indigeneity, to come home, because I had finished that pathway of being a mom. So it was really going out and just traveling a lot. I visited a lot of schools because I was doing work within mutual aid already, and really just thinking of how I could be of service. I remember the first time I went to a school out at Two Gray Hills, and I was in complete shock because every kid was Native.
Mm-hmm.
Every kid was Navajo. Everyone was Diné. It was shocking to me as someone that grew up on the outside to even know that that could have been my existence. I know it sounds really silly, but it was like this moment. It was like an aha moment of, I'm home.
Right. Yeah, I can tell. I mean, with your reaction right now, it's I can feel it. I know we're hundreds of miles away, but it's something about knowing where you come from and your ties. It's probably something that's just indescribable.
It is. It absolutely is. I can say it's a joy I've never known. It's giving me my purpose in life. I know why I was put on the planet. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because I'm just really tired today. But yeah, it's just so much came together for me in terms of what that pathway was for me to move forward in my life. You know, being an empty nester and then having this new way that I was supposed to go. And then 6 months later, COVID hits, you know, after I relocated to New Mexico. And it was just a strange thing that's when Creator put me here, because I had so many skills that were necessary during that time to be of assistance to our people. All this years of fashion, working in corporate fashion, being a design executive, you know, I used to sit in the most crazy meetings day after day, but I learned so much about how to raise money, how to purchase goods, how to bring things in from Asia, how to ship those things out to locations. So that skill set made me really kind of very much engaged in the early part of COVID of knowing what I could do to help. And so through that year and a half of when things were really, really traumatic for Navajo Nation, it allowed both the brand platform and me personally to grow into a mutual aid organization that does a lot of work, whether it's in, you know, at that time, it was definitely PPE, masks, hand sanitizer, food. But now I've shifted more into other ways to help future generations with outdoor recreation, skate park, opportunities for kids and emerging artists. So it's just been this nice progression of actually knowing kinship, actually knowing how I can be part of this community and not just say I'm Diné, I'm indigenous, we're a Native brand, but to actually step into what that means to be a Diné woman. You know, it comes with responsibility for sure.
Tell me about For Kinship. I mean, that's where you are right now, right?
Yeah.
It's a place in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
What is the goal of this that you've launched?
It's all this beautiful stuff behind me. Yeah, I mean, I've been in fashion for a long time, but I just felt the need that whatever we produce here needs to be done in a sustainable way. So everything that you see in back of me is luxury, bespoke, one-of-a-kind pieces, but they've been made from things already here on the planet. You know, I'll just point to the dress right there at the front that was in our fashion show in August. That's a beautiful bespoke evening gown that we made out of a Victorian quilt that I got up in Alaska. I mean, it's like seeing the textiles and letting them speak to you and making one-of-a-kind special pieces. It's such a loving way to express my indigeneity, to actually honor the land, to honor the process, to not be wasteful, to not do mass production anymore. So I just feel like this is really where I want to be for the rest of my career. I have no interest whatsoever in producing large amounts of things in some crazy country that I've never heard of. So, you know, times have changed. I feel people want things that are more meaningful. They want things that mean something or do something. Everything in our store helps support our brand platform. And our brand platform then uses the time and resources we have to do community work, you know. Every single month, we have a different event going on. Indian Market, we had a beautiful sustainable fashion show that paid out wonderful dividends of crowdfund money we raised to all the artists that were in the show. So it's a way that we can give back to these young people that support this work we do in fashion. Last month, we had a beautiful event out on Navajo Nation. It was the Modern Matriarch Skate Jam. This was the first ever all-girl skate jam at the Two Gray Hills Skate Park. And I mean, what a joyful day. We just had all the kids together, all the aunties, all the grandmas, all the little baby sisters were there, and just had a beautiful day to actually celebrate our athletes, because I honestly feel now that we've provided skate parks, skateboards, and mentorship, there's no reason why we aren't going to have kids in the Olympics in 8 years from now. It's just inevitable. They just needed to have that same equal opportunity as other kids into that sport. So that's really what we're about, is just, of course, I love fashion. I love doing all this stuff behind me and having a store. But the heart of the brand is really, how can we use that to give back? And it's personal for me. It's very personal.
What is it like for indigenous fashion? What's the landscape like? I know that now it seems like, I'm going to be a part of Phoenix Fashion Week this week, and they have a night for indigenous fashion designers. And you see like these movies and these shows now that are produced and directed and starring Native people, that we're starting to see Native designs out on the red carpet. What is the landscape like when it comes to that?
Gosh, I feel it's so limitless, right? Because first of all, you have to start with, we're over 570 tribes. So there's not ever going to be one perspective of what Native fashion is. It's right. Like a pan-indigenous view of like, what is Native fashion? It's many things. It's intricate. It can be completely obviously tied to our culture, but it can be also abstractly tied to our culture. There's people in fine arts that do things that are contemporary and abstract and modern that don't exactly feel like they're so tied into the culture, but yet they are. Everything about it comes from the heart and the blood of somebody who is Native. So that's, for me, it's like this beautiful wide rainbow of all types of product between all types of tribes that you're seeing out there, where I would just say to any young one getting into fashion, like, don't let anybody tell you what to do. Just what comes from your heart. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It can look however you want to express your indigeneity. I mean, look at me. I'm 59 years old. I just came back to my tribe 4 years ago. The way I express my version of fashion is way different than other people might, but it doesn't make it any less Native fashion. It's just a different way of expressing. So I would want every kid to know that they can do it however they want, and we're going to support them in that. And it's a big playground out there right now. Be creative, go crazy, go wild.
I love that. Good advice. You talk about coming back to your tribe, being 4 years old when it comes to your Navajo identity. How has that journey been like?
Gosh, just so many stumbling blocks. Like I said, there's no rule book on how to do it other than to just trudge through it. There's really beautiful things that have happened. There's been really just heartbreaking things that have happened, because with all the beautiful light and the beautiful, like everything I imagined coming home, there's also the side that's the darkness, and you have to learn to accept both things. I think for me, the stumbling blocks I've had has been hard to accept the inequity that we face on Navajo Nation. I grew up on the outside to come back and still see things how they are, with the infrastructure issues, the difference even I see in the education our kids get versus the education my daughter had growing up. I just don't feel that it should be so imbalanced. So that's something that I struggle with, because I get so frustrated that things can't move quicker. But I know that this is a marathon and not a sprint that I'm in right now. Is that I think I have a good 20 years to commit to, like, really leaving substantial positive change, like some sustainable solutions for the future with this brand, with my time on the earth. And that's really what I'm committed to for the rest of my life. Just seeing that through.
Yeah. You know, when I lived in New Mexico, I lived in Albuquerque for several years. And New Mexico, I feel like, has a high population of Native people, right? You've got the Pueblos and you've got other tribes that are also there. And it seems like for as high a rate of a population there is, it's kind of hard to find Native-owned businesses. And you're trying to help address that issue.
Absolutely. It's shocking. When I was actually in Albuquerque before I moved up here 2 years ago. And I just thought there would be so many Native businesses already here. I was in complete shock to hear that we're the only Native retailer, the only one in a town that is like globally known as the space for Native arts and culture.
Right.
So I just am very disappointed in the city. I mean, I'm incredibly frustrated that there's not more programming to get our young people into permanent retail spaces. There's all these like weekend markets, Indian markets, things that like pop-ups, all this thing where people come in and sell, but then we ask them to go back. I wouldn't invite people to be a permanent part of the Santa Fe community. I think in my lifetime, I'd love to see that be majority owned Native business here. But that's only going to come with partnership from the city because there's so much tourism money. It's just like basically how do you reinvest that back into the main thing you're selling, which is Native arts and culture. Mm-hmm. Why don't we have a whole slew of shops on Canyon Road next to me that are young Native people just starting out on their journey? We need to support them. They need that grant. They need that mentorship. So we've started here. You know, we have 10 artists that are part of our program where we give them the space to sell and operate here at the store with 100% back. So that's been amazing. I think maybe 2 of these people will probably be ready to have their own store by this year. But it's certainly, again, a disappointment that the city's not doing more. And, you know, even in Santa Fe, to see our people selling on the ground in the town square and it being 2023, it's just, I don't understand how things are so behind. So all I can say is Native people, we have to all come together and not be complicit, that we have to say that this isn't okay. We have to stand up and ask for change to happen. So I would just ask everyone to join me in doing that. We're launching some different programming, you know, towards the end of the year, kind of addressing the situation. But yeah, I'm just really, really having a lot of hope that it will be different in the future.
You know, Amy, as part of your work now, have you talked to other people who were also impacted by the Indian Relocation Act? I know that when I lived in Albuquerque at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, they had a huge exhibit. I don't know if it's there anymore about the Indian Relocation
Act. Gosh, I missed that. I'm so sorry I missed that.
Yeah, it was really cool to see like it out on display, right? You had like families, and you just had stories too, like audio stories, and just like things on the wall talking about where people ended up and things like that. A lot of people know about these kinds of policies. So has it been part of your mission now to kind of bring awareness to this?
Yeah, I think it's not bringing awareness. I'm just here to help. I get so many people that reach out to me on my Instagram. So I've started more like a direct connection, just to actually develop relationships with people that are either on that journey home, have questions. But I feel that social media has been such a great connectivity. I've actually rarely met somebody in person that has asked me those questions. It's almost all been through a crazy connection we have through Instagram. So, yeah, it's been wonderful because it's the same thing. People want to know how it was done. How did I even find my mom? How did I reconnect without a birth certificate? Like, it's all the same questions. I can't tell you how many other people have told me the same story they get told is that, oh, the hospital burnt down. There's no records. So it's definitely part of something very dark that happened during that time period. But I think, you know, now's the time for these people and these relatives to connect and actually start that process of coming home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just really fortunate that I've been able to reach out to some people and give them any advice. I can't say that there's a right way. Everybody has their own way, but just some things that I've been through.
When it comes to where you are in life right now, it seems like you have a lot going on and trying to give back. What's next for you?
What's next? Oh my gosh. Well, we just came off of the skate contest, so I'm still excited about all the opportunities that that's brought. But I think the most important thing is continuing the work we do. We have this, I'll tell you, it's an amazing opportunity to provide 5,000 kids a skateboard for Christmas, just through a really beautiful partner that came on board during the skate contest. He's offering us about $800,000 worth of merch for $100,000. So I'm currently crowdfunding for $100,000 to try to get 5,000 skateboards to kids by Christmas on Navajo Nation. So yeah, that's kind of a big part of my time, is trying to make things like that happen. But that's just because I know the life-changing aspect these kids have when they can experience this sport. It's something they can do anytime. They don't have to be on a team. They don't need a lot of equipment. They can go hang out with their friends, or they can go skate by themselves. But you ask every skateboarder who's a pro what skateboarding means to them, they say the same thing. It saved my life, because of everything it brings to your mental health. So I know it's one of the best things for our kids to fight diabetes, to have lower suicide rates, to have less depression, and to just be joyful. So, I mean, that's just something for me that I want to achieve before the end of the year. And we're just actively looking for partners to do that with.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of videos go viral of people skateboarding on the Navajo Nation president, Boo Nygren skateboarding. And
He's
then
so talented. He's so talented.
Naomi Glasses is another one who, I mean, I wish I could do that,
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, Boo Nygren came out and actually skated with Tony Hawk. And I feel that was such a beautiful moment, because that was his childhood hero. And to have that experience where Tony skated for the first time on Native land with the president of Navajo Nation, I mean, that's something for the history books, because it just shows, again, how wonderful this young president is about really keeping the kids first. His speech that day was so impactful, talking about how skateboarding actually helped him get into office. It just gave him that focus. When you fall down, you pick yourself back up and you try again. So yeah, that was just a really, really beautiful day for us back in April.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find out more about this effort, where can they go?
They can go to our website. So it's www.4kinship.com. Or if you want to find out more about the skate distribution, all you have to do is text Skate in Beauty to 707070, and it takes you to our nonprofit portal to actually support that project.
Amy, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
This is Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.